there. Okay, so project 2 is scape painting in Adobe Photoshop, ways of showing space, light logic and color palettes, using brushes and layers in Adobe Photoshop. So the first part is to take 5 to 10 photos of familiar places that have at least two ways of historical ways of showing space in the two-dimensional picture plane. I'll correct that later. Email the professor 3 of your favorites to choose the one to paint, just as we did before. Confer with the professor to pick the best one for project 1. 2, it should say project 2. Sorry about that, I'll correct that too.
I'm sorry, this is my mom. She just came here to say hi.
Stephanie, mute yourself if that
Hi.
Hi, mute yourself. Create a new Adobe Photoshop document, 10 by 16 inches, landscape or portrait orientation, color mode CMYK. Place your chosen photo on the bottom layer and scale proportionately to fill the smaller 10-inch dimension, because you can't go any bigger than that, right? We're still gonna maybe print these. Crop, using the crop tool, your canvas to the larger dimension of the placed photo. And I'll give a demo during lecture in a few minutes. So 3, do a line drawing for placement on the bottom. Whoops, here, I think somebody's trying to get in again. Who's Pierre? I don't know who this person is. Well, people get in with, they try to come in with your real name, because you're coming in with telephones that aren't yours and things like that. So,
I don't have the email of the use.
okay, so do a line drawing for placement. You've all done that before on the bottom layer of your document. This time you're going to use a small, round, hard-edged brush, because you can't draw with the pencil. We're not drawing on a vector program anymore. We're starting to use Photoshop. So I'll be talking about these other parts of it, the last part, and a little bit later. So Roland, remind me, because you're always a good reminder to go to part 4. Remind me to read part 4 when we start doing the project. I'm just introducing it now, okay? But there is a project sheet which I'll edit again. Anyway, so today I want to talk about Photoshop and show you the program. So one of the things last time that we went over was ways of showing space. I'm still interested in your understanding when you do paintings, how you're actually alluding to space in your painting. So I'm going to be doing a demo in a few minutes. The best way that I can show you what Photoshop is to actually demo and start exercise 4. But you're going to be taking photos. So in order to maybe or give you examples of what the photos should look like, Roland asked a really good question last time. He said, well, can you show us some example photos like you did, as you did the first time? And to show you how many photos would work, I went to my cell phone and I started taking photos off of it. And then I went walking last night and I took some photos in our neighborhood. So do you want me to go over the PDF one more time of ways of showing space? So then what I want to do is go through these photos and talk about the ways in which individual objects in the photos and the whole photo alludes to space. So we're going to go through these photos and I expect you to participate in, just call out some names. But I think maybe it's a good idea to go quickly review what I had last time in terms of the PDF that I showed you. And that PDF is also online. I mean, it's in Canvas. So here's a German expressionist painting, and this showed overlapping and vertical placement. Do you remember that one? Yeah, we went through this last time. Yes, for Gabby.
Oh, I can't see the painting. Or are you looking at a photo or something right now? Or
The
Yeah,
screen is frozen.
frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Okay. Can you see the file names right here?
No,
No.
your screen is, it's halfway before the file. Photos for project 2 hasn't completely cleared the screen.
Yeah.
Hmm. I wonder what it means, bring your share to the front. It's telling me that sharing is paused.
It's there
There
now.
you go. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can see it now.
I didn't do anything. All I was doing was double clicking on, I brought up my share window again. So I'm just getting the hang of how this thing might work. All I did was say new share, and then it brought up the share window again, and I double clicked on the thing I wanted to share, which was my desktop. So it's not me. You have to tell me when that happens, because it's actually something inside the connection or whatever, because it stopped sharing for some reason when I changed files. So definitely tell me when that happens, because I didn't really do anything. And then I just double clicked again on my desktop and it came up. So,
That happens in my other class all the time.
oh, really?
Zoom. So I think that it's just like a glitch in the program.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, it like made me feel like it was me, right? So I thought I was doing something wrong, but I'm kind of getting used to what I have to do. I think somebody else is maybe trying to get in here. Let me just check. No, okay. All right, it doesn't look like it. I think it would chime, but now because Alex couldn't get back in, I'm really nervous about. Okay, so there's overlapping and vertical placement. In other words, one figure is higher than the other one in the picture plane, and they're both the same size. So we don't have any size diminution, meaning things getting smaller, and we don't have linear perspective either. This one has 1 point perspective, right? It's Canaletto view of Venice. It's very similar to what you did for the first project. This is an ancient Chinese drawing. It has, oh, I see, they're both, okay. This one has linear perspective. These lines go back to a vanishing point. So the way you can tell is when things get smaller, but also particularly if there are parallel lines in, as you did in the first project where you had an architectural, that's why I asked you to do something geometric, because geometric lines show us very well how planes lead back to a vanishing point. This is an ancient Chinese drawing, and notice that everything is the same size. All the figures are the same size, but they're higher on the picture plane, higher up on our plane of picture. So that's the way, and at that time, people knew how to read space. Things that were higher up were further away, were meant to read as being further away.
I have a question about that one, the Chinese one, because you've got the higher up is further away, but the things that were closer, lower on the frame are also smaller. So it's like
A bit small.
the scale was off.
Yeah, not really. I think they're all the same size. I sort of measured them once. It just looks smaller because we're used to seeing things that are further up smaller.
Okay.
But I think they're actually all the same size. This one you can see the foreground much more distinctly. These are figures. They're about as big as the things in the background. So this area is like, obviously, a size diminution because things in the foreground, people are the same size as the castle. In reality, the castle would be much bigger than the people. And also, there's a lot of atmospheric perspective in this, meaning that, I actually wrote it here. This is Turner. He's like one of my favorite impressionists, but he was actually about 60 years before the Impressionists. So he really sort of predated that movement. He was British. So I think this is a really beautiful painting too, but notice there's a lot of atmospheric perspective. And this one finally has, I told you, 3-point perspective. So if you want to look up how to do, it's definitely 2-point. Everything goes back this way to a vanishing point, and we're going to be going over that in a few minutes. And I'm going to be going over 2-point and 3-point perspective. And these lines go to another vanishing point on the horizon line. So we're looking down at the picture. Okay, so I'm going to show you some drawings of how to do 2-point perspective also in a few minutes. But first, just now that we've reviewed these things, here I wrote 3-point perspective, size diminution, vertical placement. So those are the 3 ways in this painting that we see space. So if I close this, I hope I don't lose you. Here's the project sheet again. And I'm going to be able to bring that up. So you're still seeing my desktop, hopefully, right?
Yeah, we're seeing
Yes.
cool. Yeah.
So now I'm going to go to photos that I took again. And I started to show, and I'm going to select them and bring them into preview. So, and show you some photos that I realized had a sense of space that I wanted you. And you could start taking your photos too then. So this one, I saw some people in a gallery. Notice that the figures in the foreground are much bigger than the figures in the background. Size diminution. This one, a friend and I were cooking a fish. The fish is about as big as the guy. And we have vertical placement. He's further up on the picture plane. This one, a building in Pasadena. 2-point perspective. These lines go to a vanishing point, and these go to a vanishing point. So all of these, whoa, I'll do it with my cursor. All of these go to one vanishing point, and this goes to another vanishing point, and these go to the same one. So everything on this plane go to a vanishing point, and everything on this plane go to a vanishing point. This was in a club, a jazz club, and there's overlapping. The figure here is overlapping the other figures. And there's probably some vanishing point going on. A little bit of atmospheric perspective. The classroom that we used to have. So,
Before times.
yes, before the new reality. So here's Stephanie drawing, and notice that her head is about as big as the whole figure in the background. There's also 1-point perspective, this wall and that wall converging. A friend and I having a breakfast or brunch at a little restaurant in Altadena. notice that this plate kind of, takes the bottom edge and is very large. He's medium size in the middle ground, and she's in the background with the window. So size diminution. 2-point perspective, a fence and a driveway in Altadena. This goes backwards, that goes backwards to another vanishing point. 2-point perspective, 2 planes. 2-point perspective, this is a simple photo, and I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what this object is. This must be a building right in front of the house. But I thought this was really good in terms of simplicity. If you wanted to paint something like this, it's very simple. It might have been better in Illustrator, but I would like you to keep these simple. Another really simple photo of a landscape that I took. So a little bit of atmospheric perspective, but actually the mountain in the background is pretty clear. So it's amazing how the iPhone can make things so clear. But notice how you lose the detail in the background, right? So size diminution as you go backwards, but especially loss of detail. So that could be considered atmospheric perspective. 2-point perspective, the door open has a different perspective than the plane of the building. I'm not sure why that one got in there. This is kind of an interesting one. It was on the Christmas tree lane at Christmas. And I think it's interesting that the figure in the foreground is blurred. I'm not sure what you would call that, but there's actually a lot of size diminution. Very large woman in the foreground, person in clarity in the middle ground, and then again, some atmospheric perspective, but especially size diminution, things much smaller in the background. This is interesting because it brings into question the whole nature of photography these days, and where you might make an area of focus. So we're talking about another design concept, which I think, Ronnie, you brought up, talking about positive and negative, and so in this case, I'd also like you to start thinking a little bit about areas of focus and where you either might literally have an area of focus with the camera the way it is now, your cell phones, or just an area of more detail, an area that's being framed, an area that everything else is pointing to. So area of focus is something we haven't talked about too much. And yeah, so I'm just showing you some things that you might consider using in answer to Roland's question. So simple. This is a simple photograph. Again, keep it simple. This would be 1-point perspective again, but it actually has another wall. Yeah, so it's 1-point perspective, but I want you to use some of the other ways and be conscious of them that I've brought up of showing space.
What gallery was that?
Pardon me?
What gallery was that?
Oh, this is a new gallery in downtown LA. It's Susan, I think it's Susan Ballmetter, but there's this building on Santa Fe, South Santa Fe in LA now, and they've just renovated it for galleries, and it's amazing. It has huge spaces. Two-point perspective, I only have a couple more. So you might really be in love with some house or the house that you grew up in or something like that and want to paint that. So that would be 2-point perspective, because this plane goes to one vanishing point and all of this side of the house goes to another vanishing point. Okay, so maybe I should talk a little bit about 2-point perspective now that I've brought it up. Here are some sheets that I have on it. Okay, so you could have different points on the horizon line. All parallel sets of lines go to the same vanishing point. this is having a high eye level, right? When you're looking down at something, you're standing in relation to the image that you're looking at, the cropped image that you're looking at. So again, this is a diagram. Can you all see it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put these online. I put these on Canvas. Okay. So you can study them in your own time, but notice simple 2-point perspective, vanish horizon line. And you can draw this into one layer, right? In Photoshop. So if you have trouble with the perspective, there's no perspective tool or perspective grid, I mean, in Photoshop. There was a really useful one in Illustrator that you could bring up just to help you. I didn't insist that you actually put objects into it. I think that's always a little bit, burdensome sometimes to always be making, zapping the objects onto the perspective grid. I showed you how to do that in Illustrator, but you didn't have to. You could just draw a loosely draw it. And that's what you're going to have to do in Photoshop because there's no perspective grid that comes up. So the way it works is that all of these lines, all the parallel horizontal lines go to one vanishing point and all the other ones go to another. And you do kind of have to keep track of what's in what plane, right? This is straight on, as if you were looking straight on, having the horizon line where the vanishing points are in the middle of your picture. This is on, on Canvas again, so you can look at it yourselves in your own time. And here's a good one. I like this one because it really shows you how the box would look if there was a central vanishing and you raise the box up and down, like what if it was high, above the horizon line? What if it was lower in your picture? Any questions about that? Okay, you can go and review this in the files that I put on Canvas. Great. Okay, so I think I've introduced you to project 2. Now I want to get into actually working in Photoshop, and we'll do exercise 4. Now with my other class yesterday, we were doing Illustrator and with one of my classes, and I told them to work on the program on their own computers. Most people didn't have computers, but some people had logged into this meeting with their phone. And if you do that, you could be logged in with your phone and listening to me to give you the tutorial and then work on your computer while I'm giving the tutorial. So that might be one way for you to work on your computer at the same time as listen to me give the tutorial. You won't be able to see me, see it too big on this telephone, but it depends how well rigged up you are at home. But that might be one way to hear the tutorial. Okay, so I'm going into Photoshop. The file that you're going to use to do exercise 4 is Man and Rocks. And I put it into the files for exercises. I put it into the exercise. I think it's in the exercises area of my Canvas. So I'm going to